It was the kind of look you weren't supposed to notice, especially after 13 years of marriage and 2 years of quiet drifting. But I noticed, because I used to be on the receiving end of it. It was the tilt of her head when she laughed, just a fraction too soft, the way her eyes lingered past the punchline, her wine glass tilted toward Daniel, my business partner, my best friend since college, as if gravity knew something I didn't. That smile was never for the joke, it was for him. It was subtle, the way betrayal always begins, not with screaming or lipstick stains, but with a look, and she forgot I could read those like scripture. She forgot I learned her face before she learned how to lie. We were hosting, of course. Our house. Our table. 12 seats filled with curated normalcy. Daniel sat across from her, eyes a little too knowing. His hand brushed hers once when she passed the roasted fennel. Maybe it was accidental. Maybe it was a signal. She didn't flinch. I spent the rest of the evening perfecting my laughter. It had to sound real. Later that night, after the dishes were stacked and the guests were gone, she got a call. She was changing into her robe in the hallway when the screen lit up. She didn't know I was watching from the shadow of our bedroom door. She silenced the phone with a practice flick, eyes narrowing just slightly before she deleted the call from the log. Then she walked in, planted a quick kiss on my shoulder, and said she'd forgotten to check the thermostat. I didn't say anything, just nodded, tucked the moment in a corner of my mind, and smiled back. The next morning, while sorting the mail, I found the envelope, thick paper, embossed edge. A receipt mailed from a boutique hotel across town. One of those places with names that sound like they belong in Paris instead of 20 minutes off the freeway. The receipt was addressed to her maiden name. 2 nights. 1 suite with too much privacy. A bar tab. Morning silence that said too much. I didn't say a word. I slipped it into a manila folder in my study. Labeled it in pencil. Maybe. Then I closed the drawer, kissed her goodbye before she left for her Pilates class, and spent the rest of the day watching the footage from the backyard camera. She waved at it like always, backing out of the driveway. Routine. She didn't know I'd installed new software last month, motion-triggered, cloud-backed. She still wore her rings, still texted me mid-afternoon to ask if I wanted Thai or pasta for dinner. She sent a selfie with the dog in the living room, captioned with 3 laughing emojis. I replied. You look happy, she said. Just a good day. I stared at the screen a long time before locking it. Then I opened the drawer again, pulled out the hotel receipt, and laid it flat on my desk. The thing about my wife is that she was always a good actress, but a terrible editor. She could perform emotions beautifully. But the details? She left those lying around like receipts in the mailbox. I thought about our last anniversary. How she'd forgotten the name of the place we had dinner on our honeymoon. She'd laughed it off, said it was too long ago to remember. I let it slide. But now I remembered the way she looked at me on that trip, like I was the only truth in a world of noise. That was the same look she'd given Daniel last night, so I started logging everything. Not because I was sure, but because doubt, when left alone, becomes either madness or clarity. I needed to know which one this was. I stopped reacting. I started recording. She thought I was drifting, that I'd grown quiet with age or routine. But silence is often the sound strategy makes while it sharpens the truth. She forgot I'd once built our entire business from a napkin sketch and 4 months of sleepless planning. I didn't need rage. I needed records. She told me once, early in our marriage, you always see more than you say. I wonder if she remembered that when she booked that room, or when she saved Daniel's number under a different name. Maybe she thought I'd stopped looking, that I'd gone soft with comfort. But comfort isn't blindness. It's just the quiet before you open your eyes again. And I was wide awake. It started with a sync. 3 years ago, I'd helped her set up a new iPad. Back then, we still shared passwords the way we shared weekends, casually, without thinking. She used the same Apple ID she'd always had, and I, being the one who remembered things like email settings and cloud storage quirks, made sure everything connected. She never changed it. So when I logged into the iCloud account on an old backup phone we kept in a drawer, I wasn't invading her privacy. I was revisiting a landscape she once asked me to help build. Photos, notes, browser tabs, location history. There wasn't a smoking gun. Not yet, just the smell of gasoline. I started slow, quiet fingers at night, while she slept with one hand curled near her face like she used to when she trusted me. My screen dimmed to the lowest setting. Bluetooth off. No alerts. There were transfers labeled only D. Small ones, irregular. Just enough to seem plausible. Reimbursements, maybe. She did occasional consulting. But the destinations were vague, payment apps, routing numbers with no names. One browser tab saved on her Safari showed a map. A condo complex near downtown. Upper End. She'd zoomed in twice, clicked Street View, then Save Location. I remembered asking her that week where she was going when she came home with wind-flushed cheeks and that particular glow she only ever got after long walks. She'd said she'd discovered a new coffee shop by the water. I sat by the window for an hour, she told me, her voice dreamy. No emails. Just me. I'd kissed her then, on the temple, and made a joke about being replaced by cappuccinos. She laughed too easily. I dug into the financial logs next. She didn't know I still had access to the dashboard from our joint business account, one she never used anymore, but that's still linked to alerts. A transfer popped up, $320 labeled. Reimbursement, wellness. I flagged it. I searched the timestamp against the iCloud photos she'd taken that weekend. Nothing from the coffee shop. No latte art. Just one blurred skyline shot, and then silence. I created a folder on a secure drive. Started saving. Screenshots of her messages to a number with no name. Sentences out of context, but the subtext was there. You make me feel like I matter. Thursday still works. I miss the way you see me. I remembered our honeymoon, standing on the cliffs above Hannah. She turned to me after the hike, her face sunburnt and serious, and said, There will never be secrets. Not from you. Now she slept beside me, her hand resting on my chest some nights like she still believed in us. I kissed her goodnight, and said I loved her. She thinks she's acting. I'm filming. The next step was pattern recognition. Her calendar showed Pilates on Tuesdays, team calls on Wednesdays, and a recurring wellness block every Thursday at 3 p.m. That word again. Wellness. She'd started saying it differently lately. Like it was sacred. Like it justified everything. I pulled the security footage from Thursday afternoons. She didn't leave in workout clothes. No mat. No water bottle. Just designer sunglasses, heels, and a smile she never wore for me anymore. I kept logging. Every click, every login, every receipt. Because she hadn't just started lying. She'd started performing. But even the best performance leaves fingerprints. She forgot I could read her, past the expressions, beyond the dialogue. She forgot I still knew the language of her silences, and silence is rarely innocent. I traced it first in red pins. The GPS history on her iPad, automatically syncing through the cloud, marked her weekly route with unnerving precision. Every Thursday, around 3 p.m., she'd detour from the usual errands and park 2 blocks away from a luxury condo complex nestled in the city's rebranded arts district. The kind of place with valet trash pickup and rooftop fire pits. She stayed an average of 94 minutes, long enough for coffee and conversation, if you believed in charity. But the pattern was too clean. Too rehearsed. Always Thursdays. Always the same spot. I took screenshots, created a spreadsheet, logged entry times, exit times, duration. Her phone never pinged me during those windows. No texts, no running late messages. Just silence. The Thursday after I confirmed the pattern, I planted a recorder. It was small, legal, and slid behind a row of decorative books in her home office. The same office she'd renovated last year. To work more efficiently from home. She said she needed quiet, privacy. Now I needed the same. The following Thursday, I watched from my car across the street as she pulled out of the driveway. I waited exactly 20 minutes, drove home, and retrieved the recorder. It had 12 files. I listened to the first one in my study, alone, blinds drawn. Mostly ambient noise. A few keyboard clicks. Some silence. Then a voice, hers. You were incredible. He's still so blind. The air in the room dropped 10 degrees. Not from shock, from confirmation. It was the words still that stayed with me. Not the compliment. Not the betrayal. Still. As in, she'd considered the possibility of me knowing. She'd measured it. Laughed at it. The next file was shorter. Just breathing, faint laughter. Then a name spoken softly. Daniel, you always know what to say. I paused the audio. Closed my eyes. Daniel. The man who'd stood beside me at our wedding. The man who helped me co-found our company over whiskey and borrowed office chairs. The man who once handed me a cigar in the hospital waiting room, his hand clapping my back too hard, and told me I was going to be a great father. I opened my eyes, played the last clip, more silence. Then, "Don't worry, he has no idea." That night she handed me a bottle of red, said we deserved a quiet evening. She leaned in, habit, not affection. Her touch held heat but no weight. I poured 2 glasses, one for her lies, one for my memory. She folded herself into the couch's corner, close enough to seem familiar, legs tucked under a throw blanket, and asked if I wanted to watch something light. I said sure. The room was full of soft light and fake laughter from the screen. But I couldn't hear anything anymore. I was already somewhere else, cataloging evidence, sorting files by date, weighing silence against sound. She laughed at a scene on the show and leaned her head on my shoulder. I kept my glass steady, my voice calm. She thought I was slipping away, but I wasn't going anywhere. I was waiting for the moment the story told itself so clearly even she couldn't rewrite it. There are betrayals that land with a thud, loud, messy, explosive. Then there are the surgical ones, quiet, precise, the kind that cut before you even realize you've been opened. Daniel was a surgeon. I used to joke that if I ever disappeared, I'd want him to take care of everything, my family, the company. He'd laugh, shake his head, and say, "Don't tempt me." Now I saw it for what it was. Temptation answered. I didn't rage. I archived messages, audio files, IP logs, bank transfers, all organized by date, sender, subject, location. Her voice on a Thursday afternoon. "Next time, don't leave so soon." His text the next morning. "Still thinking about you. Same time next week?" She replied with a heart emoji. I captured the exchange. Saved it. I found photos too. None graphic. Just suggestive enough to erase plausible deniability. A wine glass. 2 plates. Her hand, half visible in the corner of the frame. Daniel's wristwatch on the table. The same one I gifted him for his promotion. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I visited our office storage unit, where old contracts and tax records lived. In the back corner was a fireproof safe. Inside it, a backup drive. Years ago, Daniel and I agreed to record all board calls for legal transparency. Just in case. It was always just in case. Now it was the case. I pulled the drive, loaded the files, scanned through timestamps. And there it was, 3 months ago. After a quarterly meeting, they'd stayed on the line after everyone else signed off. Her voice. Laughing. Soft. Telling him she missed. His brain. His voice, warmer than I'd ever heard it. "You're the best thing that ever happened to him," he said. "And somehow to me too." That one stuck in my ribs. He said that while sharing something they never should have. I backed up every file. Labeled them under a private server with encrypted access. Then I made an appointment. My lawyer, Marianne, had been with me since the early years of the company. She'd seen us bootstrapped through tax audits, acquisitions, mergers. I walked into her office with a calm face and a cold drive. She didn't ask why, just gestured to the chair. "I'm not here for revenge," I said. "I'm here for the record." She nodded once, plugged in the drive, listened. After the 3rd clip, she leaned back in her chair and said, "You'll need more than just emotional leverage. You'll need financial patterns, transfer proof, professional boundary violations." I slid the next folder across the table. She opened it. Private account logs, routing numbers connected to Daniel's LLC, emails authorizing reimbursement payments under a false consultancy name. Marianne's brow furrowed. "This isn't just adultery," she said. "This is exposure." I nodded. "Then we expose it." She outlined the next steps with surgical precision. Preliminary divorce filings, asset isolation, custodial planning, corporate ethics disclosures, all timed, all traceable. It was war, but on paper. And every step would be done quietly, legally, strategically. No explosions, just erosion. The kind of dismantling that doesn't make headlines, until it does. I left her office with a folder in hand and a strange sense of clarity. I'd always imagined betrayal would feel like a car crash. Sudden, violent. But this was a slow excavation, layer by layer, discovering just how far the route went. And now that I knew the names, the dates, the method, it was time to light the fuse. Not with anger, but with facts, and let the fallout speak louder than any confrontation ever could. The trick wasn't finding the lie. It was finding the lie she forgot to hide. It started with an email, An automated notice from a financial service we'd used briefly during a house remodel. She must have signed in recently from her laptop, not realizing the two-factor authentication was still connected to our joint archive. The notification listed a new linked account, her maiden name. That's what caught my eye. No one uses their maiden name for a personal account unless they want it off the books, unless they want it untraceable, unless they think the name they wore before their vows has become a safer shelter than the one they built with you. I accessed the portal. The account was neat, clean. Only a few transactions each month, but every detail bled meaning. There were 4 payments labeled bonus reimbursements, each tied to a date she claimed to be traveling for consulting work. 2 of those days matched GPS logs that put her at the downtown condo. Another showed a transaction to Daniel's LLC, same business ID as the one registered under our corporate structure. That name used to sit beside mine on our website. Now it was just a shadow under a false invoice. And then there was the entry that snapped something in me. A transfer labeled Home Assistance, scheduled for a weekend. She told me she was visiting her sister. I remembered that weekend. She'd come home with a new scarf and that glow again. Said they'd gone wine tasting. I pulled the calendar. That same weekend, Daniel had posted a photo of a vineyard on his company's social account. Just the scenery. But the timestamp matched. Different cities, same vineyard. I compiled everything. Filed it under a new folder, Financial. Then I called Marianne. By the time I walked into her office again, she had everything ready. The divorce documents, the asset protection protocols, a letter outlining intent to investigate internal financial discrepancies within our business. I didn't shake. I didn't stumble. She asked, "Do you want to serve her now or after?" "After," I said. "Let her have one last performance." She was planning a weekend getaway. I knew because I'd seen the ticket on her desk. A spa retreat. She said she needed space. A chance to reset? I said I understood. That night, I helped her pack. She kissed me on the cheek and said, "I know I've been distant, but I still want us." I nodded. "Take the time you need." She smiled like she believed me. She flew out Friday. Saturday morning, I met with our board of directors. Daniel wasn't invited. I laid out the irregularities, the conflict of interest, the undisclosed transactions. I kept it professional, factual. No emotion, just evidence. By Monday morning, Daniel was erased from the board, his access revoked, his shares frozen pending an internal audit, and her account flagged for financial misconduct under marital fraud and internal policy violation. I didn't send her a message. I let the silence arrive before the paperwork. Let her feel the absence of a man who once looked at her like she was the most real thing in the world, and now wouldn't even look at her at all. The curtain was about to drop, and I wasn't in the front row anymore. I was backstage, pulling the cables. I set the stage the night she returned. No drama. Just detail. A clean house. Dinner warming in the oven. Her favorite wine decanting beside 2 glasses. Fireplace flickering at low burn. A playlist she once said made her feel held. She walked in with that relaxed post-retreat air, already smiling before she saw me. It faltered only slightly when she noticed the table, set for 2, not 1. "I thought you had a late meeting," she said, slipping off her heels. I shook my head. "Cancelled." She tilted her head, reading the room. I watched her skin for cues. My posture, my voice, my eyes. Her instincts were always good. That's what made her so dangerous. We sat. She talked. About the spa, the lake, the clarity she found in silence. I nodded, added small affirmations. Let her fill the space. Then I stood, walked to the stereo, and pressed play. The speaker crackled slightly before the audio began. Her voice, crisp, unmistakable. "You were incredible. He's still so blind." Silence. She didn't flinch, at first. Just sat still, wine glass halfway to her lips, like a machine that hadn't been fully rebooted. Then she blinked. Once. Twice. "That's out of context," she said slowly. "You don't understand." I pressed the next track. Daniel's voice, low and warm. "You're the best thing that ever happened to him. And somehow to me too." Her hand lowered. The glass tapped gently against the table. She opened her mouth, but the next track rolled in before she could speak. "You make me feel like I matter. I miss the way you see me." Then silence. The room stretched long and quiet. Finally, she whispered, "You're not saying anything." I walked to the table and placed a folder beside her plate. Printed logs, GPS history. transfer receipts, browser data, financial overlays. A copy of Daniel's condo deed, cross-referenced with rental dates charged to her private account. The folder closed with a soft thud. She didn't touch it. I was confused, she said, her voice catching. We were in a weird place. You were distant. I leaned forward, just enough for her to see that I wasn't angry. Not now. You forgot I could read you, I said. That's how you got this far. Her eyes shimmered then. Not with guilt, not even fear. With the dawning realization that the game was over, and she'd lost without even knowing the rules had changed. I stood. You'll be contacted tomorrow by my attorney. The filings are ready. The board has been informed. Her breath hitched. Please, don't do this like it was all fake. I turned toward the door. It wasn't all fake. Just the part where you thought I wouldn't find out. I left her there, seated beside a wine glass she hadn't touched, in a room that once meant everything. The next morning, the documents were filed. By noon, Daniel's access was revoked. By evening, silence had settled into our home like dust, and I didn't sweep it away. I let it settle. Because now, every echo was hers to hear. Fallout doesn't come all at once. It creeps in, quiet, inevitable. 2 weeks later, it started with a compliance audit. Routine. Harmless on the surface. But Daniel's LLC, once a footnote on our vendor sheet, was flagged. The invoice descriptions were too vague, the service terms too short. 3 of the transactions tied directly to the private account I'd uncovered. One of them coincided with a weekend getaway she labeled in our company records as Executive Strategy Planning. Except there was no strategy, no meeting. Just a boutique hotel, an unspoken closeness, and a lie large enough to collapse everything we built. The audit team escalated the findings. Legal reviewed. HR opened a file. Within 48 hours, Daniel was removed from all projects and placed under formal investigation. That same morning, she received a letter from the ethics board tied to her professional license. Someone had anonymously submitted financial records, receipts, and flagged reimbursements that didn't match her service logs. She called me 3 times that day. I didn't answer. The next day, she was removed from her position on the nonprofit board she once boasted about. The same one she used to use as a stepping stone for interviews and magazine profiles. Her name was scrubbed from the site by noon. Mutual friends, especially the ones who lived in that curated Instagram bubble, started disappearing. She posted a photo of a sunrise the following week. 0 comments, a silence louder than any scandal, and then a message from her old college friend, one I hadn't spoken to in years. She told us you were cold, that you shut her out. She didn't tell us she was embezzling. It wasn't sympathy. It was alignment. One by one, the narrative she'd crafted, about a distant husband and a misunderstood marriage, cracked under the weight of evidence, and I didn't lift a finger to accelerate it. Truth is the most patient destroyer. I spent that month rebuilding what I could. The company. My name. My quiet. The nights were still hard. You don't erase over a decade of closeness in a few weeks. I missed the version of her that existed before the deceit. The version who built things beside me,